Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Temelkov.
Dear audience, I have the privilege today to welcome a very special guest, one of the most caring leaders that I have met in the bioscience world. As you know, we're on a mission to bring together some of the most caring leaders from every corner of the world and industry and amplify the impact, the positive impact on the world. And today I have the privilege to welcome Keith Williams. Keith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Marian. Thanks for inviting me along.
Well, first of all, it's really wonderful and to have you today, knowing what you do and your deep passion and conviction for making the world a better place. I still remember when you said to me, sometimes we're old-fashioned, but when you say old-fashioned, you meant caring values that really relate to authenticity, to care, to really loyalty. And I would love to hear more about how it all started with you, Keith. And those values to me should be the new values and the future values. So there's no old school or kind of dated. I'd love to really hear how you form those values in your journey. And maybe because that could be quite I'm sure there's a long story to share, but what are the key milestones and how did it all started for you and what brought you here in maybe a few minutes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of come from two different cultures, really. I was born in America and lived there till age 10. Then we came to England for a holiday one summer, and we never went back. So that was kind of a pretty big change, and I kind of had to get used to an English culture from an American culture, and as they say, two different cultures separated by a common language. So that was an interesting start to my youth and my life, really, in a sense. So.
Watch out, guys! You come to the UK, you might stay.
Yeah, see what happens. Yeah. So you and I both, huh?
Absolutely, yeah, very similar. I didn't came for a holiday though, but kind of a lot of people did and followed. And of course, you were born in America. You came to UK. It's really. And what happened? How old were you when you arrived here in the UK, and what followed?
Yeah, it was just the start of secondary school, and having let's say a very strange accent in an English grammar school was probably quite formative in being able to help you work out how to deal with people and understand the way the UK is different from America. And I think that gave me some insight into kind of understanding people a bit and what makes them tick, and maybe trying to work out how you can influence them and understand them in such a way that you can get the best out of them, I guess. And I won't deny it was quite hard. My father was still in America, so he didn't come over until I was 14. So he was still working in America but coming over on the holidays. But I think those formative years kind of help you understand about change and taking responsibility and all of those sort of things. So I think that was it certainly helped form where I got to later on in life.
I see some correlation here that someone said to me, and I also see it from my own experience, when you take responsibility from early days, in your teenage years, or especially in your 20s, a leading group of people, leading a project or responsibility, that actually sets you up for later on in life. Often we can see a correlation between leaders of the future or leading companies when they've taken responsibility early on in their career, or they faced difficulty, hardship in transforming. And how Phenotypeca was born? How did you kind of, because I know you're very entrepreneurial, you have that in nature, you love you love business, you love people, you love making an impact, and that is a fantastic prerequisite for entrepreneurs. But I know you have a number of successful exits, so it would be great to hear how it all one evolved to the other.
Well, it's sort of a bookend really with baker's yeast, and for those of you that don't know, Phenotypeca is really involved with using baker's yeast to try and make medicines more affordable for the world, because there's a good 3/4 of the population that aren't able to access vaccines, diabetic treatments, and our mission really is to try and get using baker's yeast the cost of goods down, so that everybody has a shot at getting a vaccine and diabetic treatments, for example. But right at the beginning of my career, the first job out of university, I worked in a facility using baker's yeast to make recombinant human albumin, and so it's kind of like a nice bookend at either side of I guess my story. In between times, I built up a couple of companies. One was in IT, one was a consultancy business for the biopharmaceutical industry, and both of those, you go on a journey and you build up a group, and we exited those. And I think what's nice for me is kind of all the stuff I learned over the 30 years is kind of coming to the fore now, and being able to be used in Phenotypeca to sort of make a really good go at what we're doing. So.
No, I love that, and I'm sure there's a lot of lessons that you could share with the entrepreneurs. And what are some of the most difficult moments of your life, and really that shaped you up?
Yeah, I think probably you'll understand with any business, the people are the most important things in it, and how you can kind of get the best out of them whilst maintaining a feeling of security and hopefully direction that people feel like everything's okay. And I think certainly early on, say my first job out of university, I was given the task of managing people who were in their 40s, and I was in my early 20s. And you certainly can't go in and expect them to take you seriously because of your age. So you kind of have to encourage them to participate with you in a collaborative way. So I kind of said to the guys on the shift, and of course it's shift working as well, so they tend to be quite set in their ways, shall we say?
Yeah.
So in order to try and get the guys on board, I said, look, you guys know far more about this facility than I do. I probably know a few things about engineering that you guys don't know. Maybe between us, we can come up with something really good. And that kind of diffused the whole situation. And so they didn't feel threatened by some young kid coming in who's their supervisor. And equally, I got a lot out of them in terms of teaching me, enormous amounts about how the plant works. So it was kind of a win-win, really.
Well, that is a great lesson here on its own, because we are seeing, and our role here, my role as a millennial, is to connect exactly those leaders of today, like yourself, but also with the next generation, or Gen Z, what's in between. And there's so much value. I see that there's some exceptionally smart young talent and people, but of course, they're not often understood by the current leaders of today. And really having that connection, since you've been in that position yourself, that was a great way to really connect the two and be open and transparent in the way you communicate. What role your communication played in your success?
I think that's a really good question, and I guess if you look at that situation, then go forward to where I am now with some of the really bright youth that we have in our organization, I think you get the best out of people if you give them kind of a position of responsibility, let them have the ability to make their own decisions and maybe make some mistakes, but have a safety net around, so that actually, if you fall off the trampoline, you're not dead. You know what I mean? And it's I think that's a really important thing to do, because I think you learn more when you're out there making decisions, maybe making some mistakes, than just having it all fed to you the whole time.
And that's one of the most difficult things to do for leadership, is to create that environment. And what would you say your lessons, that you create this environment of safety where people can thrive, not survive? It's just so And that's something very dear to me personally. And what we do, of course, is to see more people thriving in their workplace.
And I think it's almost about untethering people and letting them find their own way a little bit. And as long as you can do that in a way that is, not exposing them to danger or exposing the business to excessive risk, then I think that's the right way to do it. Sometimes we kind of get taught, or we used to get taught, that you kind of command and control from the center, a bit like the old military sort of approach. And I don't, in my experience over the 30 years, is you get much more out of people if you give them room to grow. So I think that's kind of been my lesson.
Absolutely. I think it's also very important to communicate well, be clear. And someone said to me, if we have to pick one thing out of that case or the communication piece and getting the engagement and really having that culture, is your first reaction to a problem. How you react when there's a problem or situation will determine whether they will feel safe to innovate and to take a chance, take a risk. Because if you react very aggressively and abruptly, that they may never take a risk again, because they might be afraid to do that. And really, it's not an easy one, of course, because sometimes the problem may be significant. It's how do you balance this out? So give them chances to do things and fail, but also help them through that problem or failure in order to grow beyond that.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges we face today is that often you have quite a diverse and disparate set of people working in different geographical locations, and I know you yourself have some of that to deal with, and how do you influence, motivate, encourage, communicate so everybody's on the same page when you've got people in different places? And I think that's one of the big challenges that we face, especially now that it seems that kind of remote working is becoming the a la mode. I think making sure that everybody is kind of clear and almost enhancing that communication effort to try and make sure everybody knows where they are and what's going on, I think is really important. And as much as possible, and I think you agree, you and I have talked about this, that you've got to try and get face-to-face meetings, because that's how you really get that social communication that we human beings like. And it's the that sort of connection you make when you've got in the same room with somebody, and all the non-verbal cues that you get that actually make a difference, and trust and all those things that get built up.
Absolutely. I think you're right. While we're building the remote and virtual presence, I think that's important to nail, and there's something very powerful, but complement it with those key moments of connection and meetings. A great leader, peacemaker, actually once told me, you need at least 6 meetings a year between, if you want this to be sustainable for a very long time. And I haven't challenged it. I haven't researched it further since. So it means every 2 months you got to have a physical meeting or connection with someone in order to be on the same page online. Of course, you can still have a lot of meetings in between in virtual, but I don't know, what is your take on it? What are your thoughts on how often we should meet?
I mean, I think that's a minimum, and especially when you're in a fast-growing, fast-reacting business, and people kind of think they know what they're doing, and they go into their little bubble for a month, and then they come back out again, and they realize that actually that you hadn't given clear instruction as to what the priorities were or whatever, and you can't blame them for focusing on what they thought they should do as opposed to what was needed. And so I really think we at Phenotypeca try and run every 2 weeks, kind of get together with everybody face to face where possible, and I think that's necessary really in a fast moving world. And how did I get there? I can remember I was running a company a few years back, and one of my sales guys was remote, so in a different country, and I was under a lot of pressure in the business to try and achieve some targets, and I think I kind of got a bit blind to what was going on, because I was communicating with this guy and he was kind of making signals that even though I wasn't in the room with him, I could probably, with hindsight, have detected something was going wrong. But I just kept saying, come on, what you're doing, I need you to get on with this. I need you to do this. And in the end, he had to have time off for stress. And if I'd picked up those signals earlier, maybe if I'd been in the room with him, and maybe if we'd gone for a beer or whatever, then we'd have, we wouldn't have got to the crisis point. And I think that really taught me that, as much as possible, can you really try and get into the room with people and give them a chance to tell you if there's a problem, because generally people don't like doing that over phone calls or that sort of thing. So.
Well, no, thank you for sharing this, because that's really a great lesson. And of course, for me, it was very similar. In my most difficult of times, when I was not around people, it's difficult to detect unless they tell you. And this is what we are looking to build here in Dynamis, a culture where we are open and we can share exactly what we're going through. It's not necessarily easy to do, but it is the future. Is a great way, and we want to embrace that type of culture where we take care of each other and share what we're going through and support throughout our journey and interests, because each one of us have interest in outside of the community and how we care and impact everything around us. And that is very important, that we all have interests and we need to understand what these are and how can we take care of them. And on that topic, how do you take care of your team? And what is your really...
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we've Phenotypeca has been going, we started off 2 months before COVID. And
wow.
Suddenly, we kind of kick off this great big project. There was 4 of us, and then suddenly it's like, oh, you can't go in the labs. And how do you deal with that when you've got a fixed timeline project to complete, and then suddenly you can't access the labs? Now, fortunately, we were able to get access because we were also doing a COVID antigen project at the same time, and that gave us access to the laboratory. So we became a special group that we're able to access. So that provided some challenges. Then you really couldn't meet face to face unless you were in. Remember, we used to have those things called bubbles, and you had to be in a specific bubble, and then that was all a bit crazy. So you couldn't. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't meet, specifically if you weren't in the same bubble, whether you want to have a curry or a beer or a party. So you couldn't do any of that. So we kind of had to work our way through that. And I think kind of with that challenge comes, being able to cope with adversity. And you almost then get a bit of a corporate culture that kind of says, well, gosh, you think it's bad now, but remember how bad it was when we had to deal with COVID, or and so I think it just sets perspective a little bit, and I think really that kind of that corporate kind of knowledge is really important, because especially when you're growing, and we're 12 people now. We're hoping to be 16 in the next few months. We're growing at a great rate of knots, and the people that were there to start with, if you've kind of set the right culture, hopefully they'll carry it through with the new people that start, and then they can know exactly what's expected and how to behave.
I think you just said that is really important. I think one of the great ways is to, of course, take care of your people is by being clear of what is expecting, and the vision, the mission. What do you expect from them as well?
Yeah.
And it sounds easy and common sense, but this is our message to a lot of entrepreneurs and companies. Think from day one, if you want to retain exceptionally gifted talent, how do you onboard them? And are you clear with your expectations? What really day-to-day could look like, and translate your vision into tangible actions and milestones that they should achieve and look forward. And we could very easily overlook that. So, of course, make sure you have, from our perspective, never lose the joy, no matter what.
No.
It's I think it's essential.
But and I think you're right. We early on, with the core group of employees, sat down and went through and created a set of 5 values, and these are the 5 values for Phenotypeca, because everyone inputted upon them. I think they can help to drive them through the business. So we put customers first. So we're commercial and collaborative. We're driven by performance. We deliver scientific excellence. We exhibit strong business ethics, and we encourage people to be happy, to be healthy, and we need to be fair. And those 5 things we try and make sure that we measure people how they perform against those values, and we make sure everybody knows what they are when they start with us. So I think you have to have something in a way to hang on, and that's kind of how we do it.
I love it. And you mentioned something very important, of course, and all those critical, and thank you for sharing those. But who takes care of you, Keith? How do you take care of yourself?
Well, my wife is fantastic, and she kind of keeps the
well, we
home
wonder
going.
what she does. So this is a moment, because we know beyond every great man, there's a great woman.
Absolutely. And that's another team as well. So the home team is as important as the company team. But I try and do, if I can, 3 or 4 times a week, exercise one way or another, even from just a short walk to maybe doing a gym session. I enjoy coaching cricket, and that gives me pleasure seeing some of the young kids learning new skills and coming forward that way. So I really enjoy that. That helps to de-stress a bit and puts everything into perspective.
We need some patience for that game, I tell you.
I just came back from America, and there was a couple of guys I was chatting to over there, and they said, "Can you explain to me how the rules of cricket work?" And I said, "Well, how long have you got? Because it's going to take a few hours." So yeah, it's a very good game, but yeah, it is complicated. Well, it's simple and complicated at the same time. But I get a great deal of joy out of both coaching and watching, and even playing cricket. I still play these days as well, but not very well. So those are the sort of things, and I think you need to have that removal from work to be able to kind of relax and de-stress a bit. And I think you and I have talked about the sort of joy of the mountains. For me, the best place for me to really de-stress is either walking or skiing or just spending some time in the mountains, because it's both a humbling and a inspiring environment, and I think it's it cleans and cleanses the body and the soul.
It's thank you for sharing this. Every one of us should actually learn what are the things that recharges us, because not only important how hard you work, that's of course very important, but how well do you recharge and how well do you rest is equally important in order for you to have longevity. And we got to understand and spend time to learn our bodies, and not only our bodies, that's the other thing. Our mental health is, now I want to make a note celebrating Mental Health Week awareness. It's so important. And I got really interested because I'm like a scientist with a magnifying glass looking for those best practices and trying to find what are those things in those categories. And for me, in order to prosper in life, it's not just the physical health. It's these 5 key categories that I've been sharing with you as well, and the priority in order matters. And mental health is number 2 in the list. And I just realized that recently, because going through a lot of things and training and taking care like you, but sometimes by overthinking, by listening too much, because I love learning, and sometimes I could spend hours a day, every day, of learning new things to upgrade. So at some point, I got this notification on my iPhone: your volume have exceeded for the week. And I said, what does that mean? I just never thought of what really the kind of overload of your nervous system. And at some point, my ears are starting to kind of beep. I said, "Ooh, maybe that's a signal. I need to be aware of that, even though physically maybe strong, but being able to." And what you said about nature is those natural sounds, those really ways of walking, and just being removed from that artificial pollution that could be around us, of lights, of noise, is essential and key. Thanks for bringing that up. It is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think we really do need to take care of that, because we're so much invaded by emails and texts and WhatsApps and all the other stuff that we get that you can be 24/7 if you're not careful, and next thing you know is that you end up heading towards a breakdown, which I don't think's I think is getting more common if we look around.
Absolutely, you got to take care of the they call it the vagus nerve, that goes from the brain all the way through the tummy and the stomach and the heart. I think it's very important, really, for us to be aware physically what this is, and also to take action for the kind of foods we eat, the kind of things that recharge us. And I never realized that from too much learning, you may also have some some side effects. That's new to me, But anyway, these are the things that we all learn. And what are the challenges that you face today? I mean, with Phenotypeca, you guys have done a great job, fantastic, really impact and mission. But I'm sure you're going through a lot of those as an entrepreneur, a lot of those challenges, like many of us are. What is in your mind today, and what are you thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, there's three areas really. We're obviously trying to raise some financing at the moment because we're in a rapid biotech growth sector, and you kind of have to do that on top of the day job, and so trying to find time to do that well is a challenge. I think at the same time, keeping the plates spinning in the right way with the rest of the business while you're trying to do that is difficult. So we're under time pressures a lot of the time, and I think also trying to get the people in the organization to feel comfortable enough to take on more responsibility. As you grow, what you want them to do is kind of be the next level of managerial, I guess, capacity, and encouraging them to do that is all. Those are probably the three biggest challenges at the moment. Really looking at it through my blinkers, and I think spending enough time with people in the organization as well, because you're so busy doing other things that I feel like I always like to try and mentor if I can, and encourage some of the younger ones to take more responsibility. And you can't do that remotely. You have to be kind of in the room and have a chat and socialize and all that sort of stuff. So I think having the time to be able to spend time with people is tricky for us at the moment.
Well, I relate to a lot of those challenges, but we honor the work that you do and the fact that you develop young talent, and you're really thinking of that, how to impact. What is your message to them? Especially if they don't have the time and they look back at this kind of episode. What are the kind of advices you could give them when they're in lows, or when they're having a tough day or challenging moment?
I think the first thing is, and I have to be careful how I say this, it is only work, and it'll be okay. The second thing is, try and rely upon your skills to do what you can do. But if you are struggling, you've got there's another 10 people around you. Just maybe share it and see if that can help to resolve the issue. Because if you keep it to yourself, it can build up. So there's a lot of talent in our business with different skills, and I think sharing, and I've always believed if you get 12 brains on a problem, then it's miles better than trying to have one person try and solve it, because they'll come at it from one direction, whereas 12 people can give you a much better outcome if people are thinking about it. So there's that, and then in terms of longer term development, build up your network of people that you really rate and value, so that you can access them for either advice or for some mentorship or something like that. So those would be the things I would recommend.
Love that. Sharing is caring, and I used to take a lot on myself, but I've learned that sometimes taking a lot on yourself may be the less productive way to do it, because having the mastermind or a session can give a lot of new ideas and really help you out. Plus the communication skills are critical. So I really relate a lot and advise them, improve your communication massively, not only the way you articulate, but the way you share and help out. And you're right, to build a network is, it's a question of, in order somebody to pick up your phone call or respond in 24 hours, for example, to your email, you got to be valuable to these people. And it's, what have you done, basically? How much value have you brought in order for them? How do I need to serve to deserve that kind of, that's maybe another question that they could be asking. And well, thank you for sharing that, because that could be useful not only for Phenotypeca employees, but anyone really that is watching the episode. We have a question here from Stoyan, who you met actually earlier, and it's also different. He's asking here, great podcast, Keith. What do you find are the best strategies to keep your team motivated and engaged strategically and tactically?
That's a really good question. So if you're looking at your company strategy, I think you have to communicate that really clearly, and people need to buy into that. And what does that mean in their day-to-day job? So, how do you get them to ask the question of themselves? What does that mean I need to do in order to achieve that strategic goal? And then tactically, clear deliverables, I think, are really important. And one of the biggest issues you find today is, what's my priority? And the thing in a small company is there's often 3 or 4 priorities. And we always like to have this neat little thing that says, that's priority number 1, that's priority number 2, that's priority number 3. And I think one of my Keithisms is probably, all 3 of those are your priorities. So you're going to have to try and do your best with
I know exactly what you're talking about, and
So, it's trying to do that in a way that isn't confrontational if you can. And let's be honest, we're all learning, and I've got a pretty big capacity to take things on, and I keep taking stuff on, but I will get to the point where it's 101%, and that's when I probably get a bit snappy or a bit, a bit grumpy or something. And recognizing when you're getting into the 90s yourself then means that you can, say no to a few things so that you don't go over the edge, and then people feel uncomfortable because you're getting grumpy or whatever. So
great.
So I think those are important pieces.
Also you mentioned something, capacity. You mentioned capacity. So how about expanding your capacity? How do you expand your capacity? In other words, how can you take on more?
Well, again, the reality is, if you become the hub in a wheel, then whilst that's good from a control and command perspective, it's not good from a growth perspective, because in effect, everything goes through you and you become the rate limiting step. If you can surround yourself with people who can adjust and adapt and adopt certain responsibilities, and almost like they would react the way you would want them to react, not exactly, but they kind of get that themselves, then you've got double the capacity if there's 2 of you, or triple the capacity if there's 3 of you, or quadruple. And so you don't get limited by being the center of the hub of the wheel. You almost let the wheel roll itself to a certain extent.
Absolutely, I love that, and it's very much because I see a lot of the mistakes entrepreneurs do is that while they, of course, you want control because it's your baby, you want to make sure things are done right, and there's certain value by not letting people too soon to take on too much so they burn out. That's for sure our responsibility as leaders to be able to understand and manage that. But at the same time, it's being able to give more and challenge people, not too much to go over the edge, but give them that trust and responsibility. I call it one of the most important wealth creation of transformational wealth. You help people grow, and that's priceless. There's no money you can put on this. Of course, it's always nice to add value, because there's you got to ask yourself, am I an asset or am I a liability to the organization? Asset means you bringing value and money in, the liability you taking value out. or money out. So and that's when you kind of think of that, how do I need to serve to deserve in order to become an asset to the organization and grow and take on more, without basically the entrepreneur becoming the one that needs the sign off and approval. Then that means one day if you're not there, then the companies could collapse. And I think this is the how do you build, how do you refine your value in order to exclude yourself out of the organization. No longer your time is needed, but the value is multiplied. I think this is the question that you need to think and answer, because if you take yourself out and then the value is not multiplied, then you're not there yet. That means you just work for your time.
Agreed. And I think certainly when I was younger, I probably would have surrounded myself with people that were similar to me. And as you get older, you realize that the biggest value is having people with differences and different opinions and different skills. And actually that gives you a much more solid basis for a business.
Agreed. And that's someone said to me, one of the greatest leaders and CEOs that I've come across, they say diversity, there's a reason why diversity is important from around the world and different groups and people, because they cover your blind spots. They can see things in a different way, challenge you, and make sure that you get used to working with people that are different and understand. And of course, there's certain behaviors and values that are important. Like, do you incentivize behavior that when you finish your work, go and help your colleague? Or do you incentivize speed and accuracy? These are kind of behaviors that are really important for the business growth, or and expanding capacity also meaning improving your skills. If you communicate better, you could close a deal faster. That means you could close more deals or bring more value to the business quicker. But that takes time and growth. That's to me also very important for expanding your capacity, being more accurate on your assessments with people, with situations. That's again emotional work, internal work as well. Keith, thank you. It's been very helpful here and very valuable to hear, of course, some of those lessons. What role care has played in your success?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it came later. I think, as I say, when I was younger, I was driven more by trying not to expose my weaknesses. And I think then I had some really good mentors who kind of cared for me and said, understanding your weaknesses becomes a strength. And that really helped me to kind of understand the things I needed to work on. And also I like your expression, the blind spots that I needed to fill. And I think when you do that, and when you realize that, most people don't come and try and do a bad job or do something wrongly, it happens. And so, if you can understand that and therefore be empathetic to that without getting too much upset by it, then that helps. I think it's when you get repetition of the same mistakes that sometimes it gets frustrating. And so how do you manage that in a caring way? And I'm still sometimes, I guess, I struggle with that, because to me that's then that's just either incorrect communication or people not thinking about stuff. So does that answer your question?
Definitely, and it reminded me of something very, very smart and wise. And it was a saying in Latin that making a mistake is human, but making them make the same mistake over and over again is evil. So it was very interesting to see that something is not right, or not working. If it's that, doesn't mean you're evil. It means it's the thing that's happening or that makes you do those things is really coming from a bad place, from not a good place that you need to work on. And you're right. It's you have probably a few grace, the grace of your people and people around you and families to do certain mistakes, and then they'll take care. But if you do them every day and there's no sign of improvement, that's a problem. So I always look at the
Absolutely.
improvement. If there's a sign
Yeah.
of improvement, they're worth even putting up the time and effort. And I think that's really a message towards everyone.
And I think encourage people to question, to say, well, why are we doing that? Well, we've always done it that way. To me, that's a really bad answer. Because if you don't question, then how do you improve?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important. Since we're very excited about what's coming now, we're going through very difficult moments of Corona, but that also accelerated. I feel that was a catalyst for many innovations and many great things in the bioscience world. And what is the future of bioscience, Keith? If you look at close our eyes in 10 years or 20 years, what is coming? Is it unattainable? Is it a dream to see people live regularly over 100 or even 150 years of age, or 200, like some people are dreaming? But we know that the people have lived over 120 years at the record case, but it's not very common to see. Just thinking of what role bioscience has to play in it for the future of healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think the 20th century was the century of chemistry, and so the 21st century is definitely the century of biology, and we're going to see that that massive set of improvements. Some may argue that chemistry and industrialization was an improvement, but on the whole, for mankind, it was an improvement, and we were able to benefit from processes that allowed things to improve for mankind. I expect the same thing from the biology revolution. Now, the reason why it's a good question is there's so many things to address. It's not just that humankind, could have some longevity. I think biosciences will address some of the environmental issues that we've got at the moment, and probably help to detoxify or reclaim some of the areas that are not necessarily usable at the moment. I think we need to get better yields from crops, and so biosciences can help with that. Clearly, our focus at the moment is medicines, and one of the reasons for that is there's a whole level of untapped potential in let's say the low middle income countries, where you could have a Nobel Prize winner or someone even just locally who could make a massive difference to their local community, who is fighting disease or is not able to contribute because of lack of access to medicine. So I think that in itself will help make a difference to mankind in general. That's kind of one of the reasons that we focus on that. So in terms of living to 120, I think the answer to that is, as long as the quality of that life is still okay, I think that's all right. I think if you're living to 120, but the last 20 years are not particularly meaningful or enjoyable, I'd question the the reason for doing it. Yeah. But the tissue regeneration is now coming around, and where I with too much sport and too much skiing have damaged both my knees, and I'm pretty hopeful that I might be able to get some cartilage regrown in there at some point. You never know. So it's stuff like that which improves the quality of life that I think biosciences are going to help with. So,
what are the most exciting things you have heard, seen in that really made a profound difference? Maybe people know, but maybe a lot of us may have not heard yet, especially in the last few years.
Yeah, I think the sort of metabolic engineering, where we can now take organisms. I mean, we obviously specialize on Baker's yeast, which is a safe organism that mankind's been working with for 10,000 plus years. But well and all, the ability to engineer these metabolic pathways, complex metabolic pathways, to achieve production of, I mean, you probably know that we're making cannabinoids now for treating people with mental disorders or other medical conditions. Originally, you'd have to grow the hemp to then have those oils that are then extracted from a sort of industrial process. They can now be metabolized in a fermentation process with some metabolic engineering, and the ability to sort of synthetically tailor that process now is amazing. And you're going to start seeing a lot of things coming out the woodwork that were otherwise unavailable. I mean, I was in San Francisco a couple of weeks back, and I was holding a pair of skis that were made by algal proteins made from algae, and it was amazing to think that they came from not a normal oil-based industrial process, but oil that had come from algae and in a sustainable way. So I think there's a lot of really interesting and good things going on with synthetic biology at the moment, and just watch this space and try and keep close to it.
Love it. And just a couple of questions before we wrap up is, what are the books that made some of the biggest impact on your life? What are recommendations of books that you recommend to maybe any age group?
Yeah, I mean, some of them go back old school. There's a really good book I read which kind of helped me organize myself, because I was pretty disorganized as a youth, and that might just be because that's what happens when you're young. But the book's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I found that really, really interesting. There was a book by Charles Handy, again pretty old school, called The Gods of Management, and effectively it talks about 4 different cultures, and that every business is a blend of those 4 different cultures that kind of descend from the Greek gods and the Roman gods in terms of how they are. So that's really interesting in terms of trying to get your head around the culture of a company, and also creating your own culture, and what do you think will work best for your business. So those 2 are really good. They helped me think about how people work, and also how people work in a team. So I guess those 2 would be influential, thinking about it, just asking me off the cuff like that.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And any final words? What is your really wish for a more brighter and more caring future? What would you love to see?
I mean, we know what's happening over in Ukraine at the moment, and that tends to focus us on kind of negative things and thinking and feeling and worry, and we're right to be worried about that. But I feel really positive. I actually feel we're in an extremely good place as a human race at the moment. We've got all of these tools and capabilities at our fingertips, and I'm really stoked to be alive at this time. I think the opportunities are immense, and I think if we can just keep talking, keep understanding each other, and keep moving forward, that we've got a great chance of improving the lot for mankind. And that's kind of what I'm really interested in.
Love it. You're right. We have a lot of challenges, but they makes us stronger. And we probably, given taken away some of the wars and the difficult moments, of course, the fact is that we live in probably best time ever in terms of opportunities.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are bigger risks, and that we need to manage. As long as we can do that, I think I'm very excited to what's coming, not only in bioscience, but overall. And thank you, Keith, for leading with care and being a leader who cares. So thank you so much. And I know how busy you are, and taking the time today was an honor and privilege. So we give honor to all of the whole team of Phenotypeca, and your wife and family and everyone behind you. And I'm sure we'll make a big impact and make a difference. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Marian. As always, a pleasure talking with you. Really enjoyed it.
Likewise.